It's the first panel of the new season. It's time to start with the Central Division. Joining me to break down the division, preview their teams, and maybe possibly tell you how the divisions could end up. And you can find more about the breakdown of all the guests and some more guests from last year, the rankings of their beliefs for this division, how it's going to end up. JablamSports.com, season 7. We are on season 7. That's right. Joining to discuss back friends are Jessi Pierce. She's on the Bardown Beauties podcast. And of course, we've seen her work on Minnesota Hockey Journal and NHL.com, mostly covering the Minnesota Wild. You can find her on Twitter at Jessi_Pierce. Jessi, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. Glad we could connect.
And of course, my pal, Bruce LeVine. He's the co-host of the Dallas Stars radio broadcast. You can find him on Twitter at Bruce LeVine Puck. Of course, the experts are joining me again. And these two teams are both, in my mind, I'm looking at that's what people do in Canada now. They look at betting odds. It's new guys in Canada, apparently. But the Wild are up there. Oh my God. How did the Wild get up there? And Dallas is still up there too. So Jessi, how the turnaround from a year ago before Krill the Thrill, we weren't expecting the Wild to be that mediocre team, but now they're like, what? They're expected to finish second?
I mean, that's Kirill Kaprizov for you, right? That's what a superstar can do. And Minnesota doesn't know what to do with the superstar. They haven't had one since maybe Marian Gaborik, and even that Kirill is a completely different level. So, I mean, he has certainly taken this Minnesota Wild team to new heights, new expectations. He makes everybody around him better. And it's fascinating to watch him in person. He is as phenomenal as everyone advertised him to be. You only got a shortened version of it last year. Obviously, he won the Calder. He did great, disappeared a little bit in the playoffs. So you're looking to see a little bit more out of him this year. But he's got some young line mates as well to help him out. Joel Eriksson jumping up to that top line center too. So it's going to be an exciting year for Minnesota. Fingers crossed, hopefully.
To follow up with the Krill, he had one good year, right? Was there a couple of years, or why is he I can't recall the last time a player entered the league and then bam, a year later, and they're making how much money? It's pretty crazy.
It is. I mean, especially in a truncated season too, where that was 55, 56 games last year for Kirill Kaprizov. But that's how important he is of a player to this Minnesota Wild organization. He's a guy that they want to build around. Remember, Minnesota waited 5 years for him to come over from the KHL just to begin with. So for him to kind of have held out a little bit this offseason was more torture, because people that saw him last year, people that saw what he was capable of, the vision, the hockey smarts that he has are just absolutely tremendous. And the creativity too. It's a wow factor. So I think Bill Guerin knew he did not want to let him go. Obviously, both Kirill's camp and GM Bill Guerin's camp came at odds a couple times, but they got it done. $8 million. He's getting paid quite well for a young guy in his second year. You're hoping for no sophomore slump at all, but I don't think you have to worry about that. Now the goal is to keep him here past 5 years once that finally comes to terms, but we've got a little bit of time to wait on that.
Yeah. Bruce, before we started recording, he was like, do I look good enough for on Zoom record? Bruce, I'm showing people my bald head now. Come on.
You have lower expectations than I do, Pete. I mean, it's nothing personal. I mean, you didn't tell me I was going on with Jessi. I thought I was going on with, with some grizzled old hockey guy who looked like he might smell of rum and cigars. And instead I've got this, but fine. Go ahead. You ambush me. Go ahead.
But I have the messy background, so that evens me out a little bit, I think.
You know what, Jessi? I'll throw the first dart if you want. Minnesota doesn't know what to do with the superstar. Last really great one you had, you sent to Dallas. With
Don't do it. Don't. You went there. You went
Mike
there.
Modano,
but he's back. He's back where he belongs now, isn't he?
I know, but he did his job here. He did what you can have him back. He did what he needed to do here. But you think about it, Minnesota, a dynamic forward that played in Minnesota, you almost have to go back to Modano for this kind of hype and success for a young player like that.
Oh, absolutely. I would not disagree. Like I said, Gabrick too had his faults. He was hurt all the time when he was here in Minnesota. So he's not well liked. Mike Modano is the adopted son of Minnesota. And yes, we hate Dallas. That's the only reason I wish you would have told me I was on with Bruce. I probably would have declined.
Well,
But
if you want to follow in the footsteps of send Kaprizov down here, we'll take him too.
Never.
And we'll hang his banner up there next to the next Stanley Cup that Dallas wins.
Oh, there you go. How's Jason Robertson doing? Did that work out? It's pretty good.
It worked out okay. He's a little bit dinged up right now, actually. We're not sure. We really don't expect him to play opening night. He got banged up the last home preseason game against Colorado, and he has not practiced this week, and he is not going to be likely to start against the Rangers on Thursday night. So it's
Rough.
it's a little bit tough, but I keep telling everybody it's an 82 game season. You got to remember down here, it is a bit football country. So if you start talking about missing 2 or 3 games, people immediately freak out. But you got to remember it's an 82 game season. So if Robo has to miss 2 or 3 to be healthy for the next 79, that's fine. That's hockey. Everyone remember, it is a marathon. This is not last year's season when you're only playing the same 7 teams and every game is magnified by 15,000% because in the division and it could cost you the playoffs.
Right.
Exactly. When you're talking about intense and everything, that last season for Dallas, oh my God, Bruce, I remember talking to you like it was yesterday with the stress and the tight schedule. And then what happened with the stoppage and then they had to catch up. It was difficult for Dallas too. So is this a breath of fresh air with the longer season, at least the more rest? How are the players dealing with going into the season with, the whole COVID problems that were going on last year?
Well, first of all, I don't want anybody from Toronto or Minnesota laughing when I talk about the bad weather down here that really cursed the Dallas season. You've got to remember, this is not an area that has snow plows or salt trucks or as you found out, we're not capable of keeping our electrical grid up when it's minus 10 degrees for more than 2 hours. That's a whole different story. But if you look at what happened to Dallas last year, everything that could possibly go wrong in a truncated season went wrong. First, you had the COVID outbreak right before the season began, and you had to put those games back into the schedule somewhere. Some players, quite frankly, I don't think recovered 100%, got their cardio, got their respiratory system back up. Then we had the winter apocalypse, the storm of the century down here, which sent the state of Texas into a complete shutdown and shut down the Dallas Stars. You come back on the other end and you're playing 4 games in 6 nights for 11 consecutive weeks, which has never been done before in the NHL and quite frankly, never should be done again. It was that tough, that physical, that straining on the team. And when you got to the tail end of that, you couldn't even squeeze into practice. The guys were so beat. They were just so physically worn and mentally worn. You couldn't bring in a practice. So how do you correct mistakes? How do you make things better when you can't take a day and get on the ice and work things out? All that being said, if Dallas doesn't lose a team record 14 games in shootouts or overtime, they make the playoffs and it's a whole different feel. Now, what Dallas is excited about is Tyler Seguin's 100% healthy. Alexander Radulov's 100% healthy. Radek Fox is 100% healthy. And just as important for the Dallas Stars, you are looking at a team that is now rested, ready, and can go. That is the big thing. Our biggest question right now is probably goaltending. Ben Bishop has not recovered. It's been more than a year since his knee injury, knee surgery. Where does that leave him? We quite frankly don't know. It's been a year. He said in training camp that all the operations that can be done on his knee have been done. Now it's a question is, can he play hockey? We don't know. Anton Khudobin sprung on us in training camp last year that he had a major case of COVID and got to the point that for 2 weeks, he couldn't walk up a flight of stairs without getting totally out of breath and bent over and gasping for air. Did that affect his season? I would think it probably did. For the Dallas Stars, Braden Holtby, is he the Braden Holtby of Stanley Cup and Vezina lore, or is he the goalie that we saw in Vancouver last year? So we don't know these things. But for the team to go into the season knowing that you're going to have 82 games, there will be days off, there will be practice days, you're not going to play only in your division, it is going to be a much different feel for the Dallas Stars. And quite frankly, when you look at the offseason moves they made and the players who are not under contract for next year, guys like Klingberg, Radulov, Pavelski, the head coach Rick Bonus's contract is up after this year. This really has a feel, minus the 5 NBA championships, of the last dance. This is the core that Dallas has known for 5 years or so, and this is their year to get it done, or the core is going to have a much different feel and look next year.
You stole all my follow-up questions, Bruce. Come on.
You didn't mention Ryan Suter, though. How do you think he fits into the defensive core? I know you guys signed him for 4 years, I think.
Signed him for 4 years, and that's a perfect case of the future is now for the Dallas Stars.
Right.
That no one cares what he looks like when he's 40. They may not care what he looks like when he's 39, but the question is, can he pair? Though we immediately thought he was going to replace Alexiak on a pairing with Miro Heiskanen. However, it seems that Ian Suter has even said he likes it better when he's playing with a natural righty, that he can put the puck in the same area as compared to playing with a lefty on the right side. So he's been paired with John Klingberg. They had a couple of rough patches in the preseason, but Ryan Suter looks to be in shape, looks ready, and he seems to be a good fit. You know, you think about it, Joe Pavelski a couple of years ago, another guy from Wisconsin, came down, and it took him a while to get situated. And then when he finally caught his feel with the Dallas Stars, he's been very, very effective. Ryan Suter does not have that luxury. This team cannot go 20, 30 games for Ryan Suter to find his footing with John Klingberg. This is a defense that this team wins with defense. They've got to have Suter ready. He looks good, but, you know, playing in the preseason and then going up against Kaprizov and McKinnon and Patrick Kane is a whole different world.
Right.
Yep. For Minnesota, again, I'm going to touch base back on the Kaprizov signing.
Yeah.
Is that what it takes, though? Is that what it takes to sign a big offensive talent on a more defensive, more two-way team in Minnesota that a lot of superstars with that kind of talent would maybe not want to go there? Is that kind of the contract that you're going to have to maybe a little bit overspend for someone of his skills?
I mean, I think so. And I think Minnesota's really trying to get out of that defensive mindset that Jacques Lemaire so gracefully put into play when they came out as an expansion team back in 2000. They're looking much more offensive. If you watched a little bit last year, they were scoring goals. Like, I have never seen that in my 6 years of covering this team. It was very 2-0 games, 2-1 games. But now they're putting up 6, 5, 4 even a night, which was really exciting. And that's a credit to Kirill Kaprizov, but also some of the other forwards. Kevin Fiala, we can't overlook him. Marcus Foligno, who's never really been a goal scorer, found a little bit of a scoring touch last season on his line. And then there's some young guys that are willing to step in and make it happen. Nico Sturm being one of those players. And even the defenseman, Matt Dumba's always been the very offensive defenseman for this Minnesota Wild team. But Jonas Brodin, his partner, stepped up, did the same thing last year. And Ryan Suter, God bless him, he definitely played more stay-at-home defense a little bit. So seeing Alex Goligoski be a guy that's ready to start the rush and move out of the neutral zone, that's very exciting for Minnesota. So I think that was probably a big message Bill Guerin relayed to Kirill is, hey, man, we can build this team around you. Tell us what you need. We'll give you the tools that you need to do that. And again, I think he took that and said, okay, but we have that same type of thing with Dallas. It's a little bit longer of a window, but it's a smaller window that Minnesota has, especially given contracts and their limit on spending thanks to the Suter and Parise contracts that were bought out this offseason. So yeah, I'm excited. It's a little bit of a turning of a page. There'll be some growing pains for sure, because it's new faces even from last year. This is not the same team that went and took Vegas to 7 in the playoffs. This is a little bit different looking team. You've got completely new defensive schemes a little bit, and it'll be very interesting to see how they all mesh together, because team culture was a big thing stressed by Dean Ebbson and Bill Guerin, and they're going to keep pushing that agenda this year in order to help them reach success, along with the skill of Kirill Kaprizov too.
Speaking about guys switching teams, hey, I hear Ryan Suter's name. I'm hearing Alex Goligoski's name. It's interesting enough, the correlations between the two teams. But when you're mentioning these players in this team, how Minnesota's changing, it seems like the league is becoming a lot more skilled, a lot more faster, a lot more offensive overall. And those are the teams that take you to the playoffs and get you that playoff spot. But then, as we've seen in the last few years, Tampa Bay specifically has had to change their game and adapt to being a more two-way, a bit more physical, a bit more nasty to go deeper into the playoffs. We saw Dallas execute that in the playoffs. We saw Montreal and the New York Islanders show that that's kind of what you need still in the playoffs. So again, Bruce, what matters more? Are we needing to be offensive to be that better team? Or do we still need to be nasty and defensive to win the cup?
Well, first of all, you're talking about a Dallas team whose magic number for the past 3 years has been 3. Remember, Jessi, you're probably too young, and Peter, you're Canadian. But they used to have a thing on the weekend, Schoolhouse Rock.
I remember that. Yeah,
they had
I'm just
song,
a bill sitting on Capitol Hill,
exactly.
right?
They had a math thing that 3 is a magic number. Well, for the Dallas Stars, getting to 3 almost guaranteed a victory every single time out. When you had a couple of years ago, Ben Bishop and Anton Khudobin leading the league in save percentage and second to the Islanders in goals against, 3 was the number. All you need to do was get to 3 and you win. Now, that is a style that a lot of teams just can't and quite honestly don't want to do. You're not going to see the Maple Leafs winning by getting to 3 and then sitting on a lead. It's just not what they do. When you look at Tampa, though, and Tampa won because they were the most talented team in hockey. I mean, they had Savard and their bottom pairing. They traded away for a number 6 defenseman who on most playoff teams would have been a top 4. Look at a guy like Blake Coleman, who was a 3rd or 4th liner on Tampa, and Calgary just backed up the bank to bring him there. Calgary had an embarrassment of riches and depth, which is why they won 2 Stanley Cups. And, oh, yeah, the best goalie on the planet, which doesn't hurt either. So when you talk about this is why a lot of people think that the New York Islanders are the team that if anyone's going to upset Tampa or take the crown away, it might be the Islanders because the Islanders play that kind of system. Look, I love goal scoring. It's sexy. It's the reason that Leonardo DiCaprio is on the poster for The Wolf of Wall Street, not Jonah Hill. Goals are sexy. People want to see that. But when it comes right down to it, when it comes to the playoffs, you better take care of your own zone. Teams are not winning Stanley Cups, winning the final game 8-7 and 6-4. You know, as much as the 80s were a fun time for hockey, those days are over. So you've got to have a team. I mean, again, I don't want to dump on you, but look what happened to Toronto in the playoffs last year. You know, if you take a team that can't score or can score and then shut down their scoring, then what happens? So yeah, eventually teams that stop the puck from going in the net win Stanley Cups. And that's always the way it's been. Look at the Conn Smythe trophy winners. How many have been, goaltenders throughout the years? If you keep the puck out of your net, you win Stanley Cups, and that is not changed, and it won't change.
Yeah. J.S. Jaguar won it big time, even though his team lost in that final. So
yeah, had to measure those pads, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are some big pads that man wore.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So before we leave, and again, if you go to the website, jablamsports.com, this is season 7, episode 1. A lot of our guests are going to put down their rankings for their division. You can check that out as well. Best breakout player they believe for their teams. Jessi, so are the Wild really, in your opinion, the second best in this division?
I don't know. They let you down so often, right? Like last year, they weren't supposed to be. They exceeded expectations. I don't think that they are the second best, especially if you have a healthy Dallas. I think a healthy Dallas team is a very threatening team, especially because, like Bruce had mentioned, they know that they have that window. They know it's winner or now or don't. So I wouldn't say they're the second best. I think they are in the mix up there. I mean, certainly Arizona, everybody will beat up on Arizona, which is always kind of a fun thing to do. But I would say maybe 3rd or 4th. I wouldn't put Minnesota because, again, I think there's those growing pains. It all depends on how they can all gel together. What Kevin Fiala looks like with Freddie Gaudreau and if he's getting any support system and around him as well. So I wouldn't say top 2, but definitely top 3.
And Bruce, Dallas, how far can they go up now from after last year?
Well, let's put it this way. The team is not going to lose 14 games in overtimes and shootouts this year. So that's going to be a step in the right direction. Again, I'm going to go back. There was a show in the 80s called 30-something. The Dallas Stars are the sequel to that show with the team that they have now. It's all about the 30-somethings on this team. Can Sagan, Radulov, Jamie Benn is going to be closer to 35 than 30 when the season's over. Pavelski, Sekera. You look at the goalies, both Khudobin and Holtby are in their 30s. If the 30-somethings can come together and stay healthy, I agree with Jessi. Dallas, I think, is going to be the second best team in the division in the regular season. I think Colorado, everyone thinks Colorado is going to win the division. I don't see a reason to say why they won't. The one team that we haven't talked about that I find most intriguing in this division is the Chicago Blackhawks. You look at what they added in the offseason. Marc-Andre Fleury is a huge step up in net.
I don't think he's ever missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
No, 15 straight seasons he's made the
There you go.
playoffs. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. So you throw Chicago. I don't buy that Seth Jones is washed up and not worth $9 million a year. You heard that around, of course. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. Some of it may not be true. I read that on the internet. Abraham Lincoln said it, so I know it's true. Seth Jones, I think, is going to be a monster back on the blue line for Chicago. I think, getting rid of Duncan Keith, setting him away, great player, but you have upgraded greatly from Keith to Seth Jones. Then you get a healthy Jonathan Toews back. How can everybody be overlooking Chicago right now? I would say that this division, minus Arizona, who do you look at and say can't make the playoffs in this division? Who do you look at in this division and go, if the chips fall correctly, they could be top two. And if things go bad, they could be on the outside looking in. Winnipeg, if they get a good year out of Hellebuck again, who's going to look past them? St. Louis, who knows? If Tarasenko comes in and scores goals again, and, I don't know how happy he is, but if he's happy, can St. Louis do it? Nashville always surprises everyone year in, year out. I look at Nashville last year and go, that's a team that shouldn't have made the playoffs, but they did. So I don't put anything out, but I do believe that Colorado, Minnesota, and Dallas will be in the mix. I think Colorado wins the division, but boy, if things fall together in Chicago, who's to say they can't be the surprise team? Or Winnipeg. This is going to be, at top to bottom, I think this is the best division in hockey, minus Arizona. And it's going to be a great division to watch. It really is, because there is no one in this division, except Arizona, that you look at and go, can't not only make the playoffs, but could compete for a long playoff run.
Right.
Oh my God, guys, I gotta go. You know what time it is? It's hockey season time. All right. Thank you guys for joining me again. That's Bruce LeVine. Puck is his Twitter handle, Bruce. And of course, at Jessi_Pierce. Jessi, thank you guys for joining me.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure, Pete. And nice to meet you, Jessi.
Nice to meet you too, Bruce.